Do you want to write fiction but don't know where to start? Believe me, I understand. I've stood in your shoes. I've wanted to write amazing stories and wondered if I was even on the right track. I worried and struggled for years. I know what it feels like to have no idea what you're doing. Like everything you write is cheesy and amateurish, and you'll never be good enough to sit on the shelves next to the great authors of your time, or the classics. But I want you to know there's an answer for you. A way to know that the stories you're writing will resonate with readers. A way to transform from wherever you are now in your writing journey to someone who's universally hailed as talented and a skilled storyteller. Welcome to The Story Savant, the podcast with free writing advice for the aspiring storyteller. I'm going to give you every tool I know to help you become a master storyteller. Every week, I'll bring you tips on story structure, characterization, themes, heroes, villains, and more to automatically make your story resonate with your audience. Stay tuned. We're going to learn to tell amazing stories, and we're going to have a ton of fun doing it. Let's do this. Good morning, Story Savants. Today, we are going to talk about indecisiveness in our writing, because this is something that I'm kind of getting the idea that a lot of people struggle with. I've been hearing it from clients lately, from coaching clients, and once you hear it, the same thing over and over, you start to realize that there's probably a lot of people that are struggling with the same thing, so we're going to talk about it. Often, what my coaching students tell me is that they've thought about how to write a particular part of the story. They have some ideas, but they can't decide which ones to use. So, for example, I might say something like, what does the climax of your story look like? And they don't know. Now, they know what it is in a very general way, in that it's going to be the main protagonist having some sort of face-off with the main villain or antagonist, right? But beyond that, they're going, I don't know what it looks like. And once again, it's not that they haven't done the work. They have some ideas. They've brainstormed some things or done some free writing or mind mapping or, what have you. And they have some ideas, but they just can't decide what they want to do. Have you ever had this problem before? Another form it might take is maybe they have an idea about how they want the story to end, but they just don't think that it's good enough. They just don't think it's epic enough. I bet this has happened to you at some point in your writing career. Why does this happen? The main reason, the most, logical, straightforward reason it happens is because we don't have any direction for our stories. We don't have anything to write toward. Guys, when it comes to writing, we need to have something in mind to write toward. And I know, I can hear you, the pantsers are going to disagree with that. But even when you're pantsing, you usually have some idea of what the story is going to be. You usually have a scene or a situation, you have something that you write toward. But the main reason that I'm such a big proponent of outlining is because if you have an ending in mind, you can write toward that ending. Even if you're not exactly sure how you're going to get there, it gives you a goal, something in mind and somewhere to go with it. So, in terms of the actual indecisiveness, what is the issue that we're dealing with here? It could be a creativity issue. In other words, maybe the endings you're coming up with really are cliche and there's nothing that's really lighting you up because it's not creative enough. If that's the case, you probably need to do some more brainstorming. You need to, get out a pen and paper and come up with some better ideas. I always say that when you're using the plot points, don't go with your first or second or third idea. You really should throw out like the first 5 to 10. Otherwise you're going to end up writing to a cliche and you're going to become a little bit lazy in your writing. You need to come up with things that are really different and that would be really surprising to the audience at that point. And if you can't come up with anything, throw a sparkly unicorn in there. It doesn't really matter. Unless you've set up for a sparkly unicorn, you're probably not going to use that in your story, but it can get the creative ideas flowing. Ask yourself, what would be the most unexpected thing to happen right now? Another thing to do is come up with, everybody wants an epic ending. Again, we're going with what is your ending or climax going to be? This could happen at any point in your story. You don't know how to get from A to B. You don't know how to, you're going to figure out the scene. You don't know what your character transformation is going to be, anything. But for the ease of talking about it, let's go with the ending. So you don't know what your ending is going to be, and everybody wants to have an epic ending. That's just part of being a writer. You want it to be memorable. You want it to be really, really epic. Well, what kind of epic are we talking about for your story? Are we talking about action? like an action film? Are we talking about emotional epicness, like epic romance or epic transformation or epic tragedy? Are we talking about solving an epic mystery? Exactly what, maybe define your epicness in a way. And then come up with really creative ideas, come up with 10 or 15 of them, and then decide which one is best, okay? So it could be a creativity issue and you just needed to do some more brainstorming. However, I actually think that that is probably only about 10% of the time that is actually the issue that you're dealing with indecision. Really, I think it is actually a decisive issue. And here's what I mean by that. We all kind of hamstring ourselves in this area. It's basically a way of doubting ourselves, doubting our ability, doubting our creativity. It's a form of imposter syndrome. I don't know if that's good enough ending. I don't know if that should be the right one. You know what I mean? We're making it too hard. We need to get out of our own way. And let me give you some reasons for why we have such a hard time getting out of our own way. Number one, we tend to think all of our decisions are set in stone. Now, maybe we know consciously that they're not. I can tell you, your decisions are not set in stone. You can change your outline anytime you want. And you can say, yeah, I know that. But somehow, on an unconscious level, we still think they're set in stone. It's just like kind of a default we have. So if you ever get to the point where you're cringing and trying real hard not to make a decision, stop. Tell yourself, this is not set in stone. I can change it anytime I want. Okay, we have to get that into our head so that it's more fluid and we don't feel like once we make a decision, there's no going back. Okay, there's absolutely, you can change. Guys, I change my outlines all the time. Like, you can do this anytime you want. Another problem is we don't think we are creative enough, or the idea isn't creative enough, which I've already talked about. Don't think that. Again, it's just about believing in yourself, believing that you will be able to figure out the story. Maybe you don't know how it's all going to work out right now, but have faith in yourself that the story will come. You just have to get started. Another problem is trying to force the muse. Now, this is going to sort of address pantsing versus plotting, right? It is really hard sometimes to sit down and try to force the ideas to come, okay? I know that. Anyone who's ever tried to do it knows that. You sit down and it's just hard to come up with things. You're trying to force it. Well, that's okay. That's a normal part of the creative process. But this is what I'm trying to help you get past. We have to get started. Remember before I talked about how you need to have something to write toward? This is how you get past the indecision. This is how you get past trying to force the muse or thinking that you're not creative enough, okay? You have to get started. So this is what I'm going to encourage you to do. Make a decision and start. Just write toward that decision. So let's say you have 5 different ideas about how your ending might go. Pick one, whichever one you think is best right now, pick it and start writing toward it. Give yourself permission to make a decision and start writing toward it. You can and you should change things along the way as more ideas occur to you, because that's what will happen. Once you start writing, you'll be amazed, because before you couldn't force the muse, and you'll just get this influx of ideas, and everything will probably change, and you may not end up going with that ending at all. But you need to get started and start writing toward something, and then the inspiration will come. And you can change things in your outline as you go, but the inspiration isn't going to happen until you get started. So again, using the ending as an example, one of 3 things will probably happen after you do this. So you pick an ending, you start writing toward it. The first is that the actual ending you're going to use will come to you, which is what I just talked about in this blazing inspiration. You'll get the ending, right? The second thing that might happen is that you'll end up keeping the ending you chose, but the details will occur to you along the way. And this is another thing that I think we don't entirely understand at first. Let's say you have a really vague ending because you just have no idea where you're going with it, right? So basically the ending you have right now is my protagonist faces off with my antagonist and somehow beats him, okay? Obviously, you need to have a more fleshed out ending than that. But as you start to write, the details will come to you in the writing. The characters, who needs to be there, what needs to happen, the players that need to be put in place, all of that will come as you start to write. So maybe the ending was perfectly okay. You just didn't know it because you didn't have all the details in place. And so you were spooked about using that ending. That's okay. Just get started. And the details, which is going to make the story really rich and memorable and resonant with the readers, they will come. The third thing that could happen is, and this is probably a little bit less common, but I have heard authors talk about this before. You keep the same ending, even with all the details in it, you still kind of think it sucks, but you just can't think of anything else. But guess what? More often than not, when that happens, the audience loves the ending, loves it. I've heard, like I said, stories about this where the author couldn't think of a good ending. They put everything they possibly could into the ending they had, but they just got to a point where they're like, you know what? I just need to get this book published so I can move on to my next project. And then their audience's reaction was, that was the best thing you've ever written. We loved the ending, you know. Hi there. Before you go, if you found value in this episode, I would appreciate it so much if you could leave me a review on iTunes. Be sure to screenshot it, share it on your favorite social media platform, and tag me. Remember, only you can tell your story, and there are tons of people out there waiting to connect with it. So get out there and write the best story you can write. Remember, only you can change someone's heart with your fire-breathing dragons, your mind-blowing mysteries, your epic romances, and your intense thrillers. So be a story savant and get out there and get that sucker written. Did you know you can work with me? I do story consulting on an hourly basis. So if you want help developing your story to make sure it will be a winner, go to my website at www.authorlkhill.com/work with me to learn more. See you there.